At this point, we have been able to log in our users, but we need a way to log out our users. So to do that, what we're going to do is to write a test that's going to log in a user and then log out the user. So I talked about using the client session. So whenever I log in a user, we actually create a session for the user. And what we store is the session ID or the user ID of that specific user who is logged in. So we're going to be making use of that. So let's go ahead and try to create a test module for our logout functionality. And I'm going to create a test logout.py file. So this is going to be very similar to our login.py. So I'll basically copy a lot of the utilities that we have in here. I'll remove some. So I'll just basically paste most of the inputs we have. I'll also go ahead and create the class. So I'll just call this our class of logout test, and then in here it's going to inherit from the test case class. Now once we've done this, I'm going to first close the terminal, and then I'll create a very similar setup method. So I'm just going to copy these attributes right here. I'm actually going to copy even where I will create the user. So when you have that, then here I'm also going to go ahead and create this user object. So this is going to be user, actually the user class from getUserModel. So once we have this, then we are good to go. So what we need to do is to basically go ahead and try to log in this newly created user. So the first thing is always to create the method. So I'm going to just come and say def test, and then in this case I'll just maybe call it logout view. So we're going to test if the logout view actually logs out a user. So just come and say logs out, and then and say user. So this will take in self, and then basically we shall go ahead and try to, so this is supposed to be logs out user. So once you have this, then the next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and try to write this logic. So now that we can log in a user, we can use our client to actually go ahead and log in a user. And then we can do that is by just coming and saying self.client. Now this gives us access to a very important method, and that is the login method. So by using this login method, we can pass in the credentials such as the username. So the username can be the username of that user we have created. So we can pass in self.username. And then we can also go ahead and pass in the password. So we can just come and say password. This can be self.password. And once we've done that, then we can go ahead and assert whether this user actually is logged in. And the way we're going to do that is by checking if the user ID is located within the session that's created on this user logging in. So to do that, I'll just come and say self.assert. In this case, I'm going to assert if it's true that the user's auth ID exists within our session. So we're going to do that is by checking. So in this case, I'll just say underscore auth, and in this case I'll just say user ID. So we want to check if this is in the client session. So we shall do that by saying in self.client, and we shall access the session. So let's try to run this. So when you save, I'm actually going to close this, and let's get access to this terminal. Now when we have this terminal, we run our tests again. In this case, we expect it's going to be true that the session ID actually exists within our session. So once we've done that, then I'll go ahead and try to make a request to our logout URL. So we're going to create a view that's going to have the URL for logging out, and when you make a request to this URL, we have to log out or remove the session of this specific user. So to do that, we're going to create a response object, and this is going to be from self.client. So in this case, what we can do is to just get, and here what you need to do is to get the reverse for that specific URL. Now let's just call it logout. Now since we have this, the next thing is going to be to check if the user ID does not exist within the client session. So we're going to repeat this. So we just come and say self.assert, and in this case we can just say assert true, or you can even say assert false. So let's try assert false, and in this case we can just repeat this statement right here. So in case the user logs out, we shouldn't have the ID in the session. So I'll just come right here and copy this, and then I'll paste it in here. So that means when the user logs out, their session will be we shall get rid of the session ID, of their ID from the session, and therefore they will be logged out. Now let's save and try to run our test. Now in this case, when we run our test, of course we expect it to fail because now we see that the reverse for the logout is not found. So let's try to build this. Now I'm going to head over to our views.py, and that is going to be within our accounts app right here. So within our views.py, I'm going to begin by first of all creating the logout view. So I'm just going to call this logout user, and this is going to take in a request. Now what's going to happen in here is we're going to use the logout function from Django to log out the user, and what this does is to take in the request, delete the user ID from the session, and therefore log out the user. So I'm going to head over to our top, and what I have to do is to say from Django dot, in this case I'm going to say, actually we don't need to import again since we have already imported this. Then I'll just come and include logout. Now once you have that, then inside here what you shall do is to just, sorry for that, I think something is wrong. So in this case we shall just log out. So this will take in just a request object, which is going to be the request object for this specific view function. And once we have that, then let's go ahead and just redirect to our success page. So in this case we shall just provide a reverse for our home page. So once you have this, then the next thing is to create a URL configuration for this specific view function. So I head over to our urls.py, and what I'll do is to come and say that we're going to have a path. This is going to be for logout, and then within here we shall have views.logout user, and then we shall give this a name which is going to be logout. So hoping that this is what we provided within our test. So when I save and try to run our test once again, we now see that our tests are actually passing. So let's go ahead and try to include this URL or link within our templates. So I'm going to head over to our base.html. So search for our base.html, and then within our header, so we have here where we are actually authenticated, we're going to add one URL, and that's going to be for our logout link. So I'll just come right here and then say we're going to have logout, and in here we shall have our logout name. So when I save, in this case when you head over to our browser, when you try to refresh, we're now going to see that we have a logout link right here in our header. So when you try to log out, it's going to redirect us to our home page, and in this case we have to log in. So at this point we can be able to log in and log out, and then we're going to go ahead and build onto this to basically go ahead and manipulate our posts and also do other important interesting stuff.